Today, I'm going to be talking about the top 10 weirdest swords in my opinion. Number 10 would probably be the Urumi. Um, I wish I had a real life example in my collection. I don't really have too many weird swords in my collection, but the Urumi comes from the Indian continent. Indian as in India, not as in the Native American, but it was used by the Rajputs, which were the warrior caste in India, obviously. It had a long, flexible blade and was wielded more like a whip than a sword. It takes a lot of flexible weapons in general take a lot of skill to use. So it is not recommended for beginners or anyone who has to use a Urumi. Basically, if you see someone with a Urumi, that person's either very skilled and you should stay away, or they're a complete idiot who are a danger to themselves, and you should stay away for a different reason. Number 8 would probably be, let me think. Gun swords, real life gun swords. Yes, they existed. Combination weapons have existed. Like, if you ever played Final Fantasy, you should be aware of some gun swords. I know they appear in one game. I'm not too familiar on the lore to know the exact game, but I know they appear in one game. However, real life gun swords are a bit different than in Final Fantasy. Because, first of all, they were not very practical weapons. They're usually combined with, like, flintlocks, pistols, and thus could only hold one shots. There's, one example of, a knife pistol that also has a calendar in the Czech Republic right now, in the museum. There exist, like, sword cane pistols that are also warhammers. So, combinations of other weapons did exist, which brings me to number 7, the crossbow sword. Yes, that was a real sword, or there is a real surviving example of a combination of a crossbow and a sword used in the 100 Years' War. It's in the museum, and you can look it up if you don't believe me. Number 6 would have to be, they don't really have a name for it yet. It is so rare, there are only 2 surviving examples. The medieval people might have had a name for it, although usually medieval people just called swords, like, swords. And this might be cheating a bit because it has a sword handle, and it looks kind of like the sword, but it's also a mace, and an axe. And one of Robin Sword's, updates in his community, you could see a picture of one. Todd Cutler and Matt Easton did a video of one, so shout out to them. Much bigger sword YouTuber communities, they're great. I wish I could have a name for you, but to my knowledge, this thing does not have any modern names. Number 5 would probably be the Montate. Stepping away from combination weapons, the Montate is basically the Iberian or Spanish Zweihander, meaning two-hander. The Zweihander in German means two-hander. I'm not sure what Montate means, but it is a big, hefty thing, wielded more like a spear than a sword, kind of. They were used in late medieval, early Renaissance. Number 5 would probably be, hold on, let me think. Number 5, this is also kind of cheating, as I'm not sure if, it was ever made, but I did find a newspaper clipping article of basically what was essentially a taser sword. It was an invention by an American inventor, around, the time when people were experimenting with electricity. You got the likes of Nikola Tesla, and whether or not you ever agree he stole his inventions, Thomas Edison did experiment with electricity. And there was an inventor in a newspaper article who built a prototype for a cavalry saber that hooked to a battery pack on a soldier, like a cavalier's belt, and it was essentially a stun sword. Boy, I wish this could have been a real thing, but for those of you who do knife training, I know you're like, no, we have electric knives. I know it's not everybody, but I know some people who do knife training do use electric stun knives, and they're probably like, well, I'm glad this isn't a thing. So let's see. Number 4 would probably be, this is in no particular order. Like I said, none of my videos are scripted. I'm just thinking these off the top of my head. I just know a lot about swords. Okay, number 4 would be, I guess, again, cheating, but, competition lightsabers for obvious reasons. Now, again, it's cheating because they're not really using combat anymore, but I actually do have a competition lightsaber. You're like, oh, it's a toy, and I'm like, well, yes and no, but, hold on, let me get it. Sorry, it's somewhere in here. Okay. So this thing, so it's made from propylene, I believe it's called. Again, I'm no chemist, but it's not plastic. That thing, like, bones will break, human bones will break before that thing. It is a very tough material, despite its looks. And lightsaber combat is, a real recognized sport. In fact, in France, they sort of recognized it like lightsaber fencing. There are organizations like Terra Prime Light Armory that recreates the moves from Star Wars, which is fascinating that a fictional thing could become so widespread to become somewhat real. Again, brings me back to number 3. Again, a complete other fictional sword. I'm trying to do real swords, but like I said, real-life versions of it are replicas. He wouldn't really use them in combat. But the Batleth, the Klingon sword from Star Trek, which looks more like a bladed bow. Number 2 on my top 10 list of weirdest real-life swords would probably have to be sword canes. I do have a sword cane umbrella. But it's sort of a modern weird example. They're basically exactly what they sound like. They're canes with a long hidden blade hidden in them. So you unscrew the handle and there's a sword blade attached. And they were used to, because, as much as I hate it, people stopped carrying swords in real life. So people would hide them in canes. And number 1, again, this is not super weird, I don't think, but it is, like, super unknown. The semi-spatha, which, in late Roman times, so the spatha in early Roman times was sort of a cavalry sword, but while the gladius, which was much shorter, was an infantry sword. But the semi-spatha in the later Roman times was sort of like a hybrid behind the two. Basically, it was a sword meant to be made for both cavalry and infantry. It was basically a shorter spatha. It was not as long as a spatha, and not as short as a gladius. Now, if you're wondering why I ranked that as number 1 and not the other super weird examples like the prototype stun sword or the Urumi, I'm just like, again, these are all off the top of my head, none of this scripted fat rocking on my dudes and dudettes.